Hello, welcome to your weekend on Spectrum News 1. I'm Timothy Parker. Here's what we got for you today.
This right here, this is the largest collection of mezcal in the country and the world. I'm Natalie Basha at Madre Restaurant in West Hollywood, where owner Ivan Vasquez says he didn't create this just for the novelty. He carefully curated this in order to honor the families and the deep traditions behind Mexico's most beloved spirit.
It's an age-old European gardening technique that's making a comeback. I'm Rachel Menatop in Pasadena, where one woman has been able to use it to transform her entire garden and cut her water bill in half.
And college football is back just one more week before USC and UCLA kick off. We'll look ahead at what can we expect this season. Relief is coming for millions of Americans stuck with student loan debt. The Biden administration on Wednesday announced a new program to forgive $10,000 in debt to those who qualify. The White House says that's about 20 million people, so almost half of the 45 million borrowers and about $500 billion worth. Brenda Marquez went to CSUN to learn how people are reacting to the announcement, and not everyone is so happy about it.
With a warm breakfast from the deli at Cal State University is how doctorate student Angel Vasquez likes to start his mornings. But with the rising cost of food, that has become a luxury for him, which is why he is looking forward to saving some money with the student debt forgiveness plan.
Well, I have $60K in debt, so this is definitely a breathing room for me.
Vasquez is pursuing a doctorate in education and had planned to pay for it with scholarships and grants. But with high tuition prices, he had to take out student loans.
I've been cooking more at home and trying to save and looking for sales in a couple of stores.
For decades now, the cost and depth of education has trended up. According to the Education Data Initiative, Californians owe more than the average borrower, with more than 3 million residents owing the federal government an average of $37,000 per person. Professor Marlene Pearson says she's still paying back the student loan she took out 10 years ago.
We need it. I mean, I have some student debt from my PhD in 2012. I'm still carrying some debt, and it would be nice to have it brought down so that I can handle it.
But others, like student Karina Martinez, who has paid for her classes entirely out of pocket, argue that this will only cause tuition to go up, putting Americans in more debt.
Right now I don't have debt, so if the price of tuition goes up, then, or like inflation affects the tuition, then it would be harder for me to actually maintain that plan of me not having debt.
As for Vasquez, he's already making plans on what to do with the money he won't have to spend on tuition.
I'm gonna be able to do other things that I was planning for a long time to do.
And looking forward to finally receiving his diploma next year.
The housing crisis is making its way to one of SoCal's wealthiest beach communities. A developer says he's providing low-cost housing to Manhattan Beach. Dave Stokes spoke to critics who say it could harm the area and environment.
Manhattan Beach resident Rick Ralph lives in a luxury condo with an ocean view and a steady sea breeze. Last January, Rick caught wind of a new development in his neighborhood, the like of which this laid-back surfer town has never seen.
You know, we're a low-profile kind of character town.
The city's planning commission has approved a 4-story, 79-unit luxury apartment building, and the state of California is forcing the city's hand because 6 of those units are reserved for low-income families.
I don't think that's going to have a huge impact on the housing issue with affordable housing. And then you got to take into consideration where they're building it.
Next to a nearly 100-year-old oil refinery, Rick and some of his neighbors are concerned about the environmental impact. Last week at a lively city council meeting, most citizens spoke against the project.
We don't want this, okay? Nobody does.
But a number of people offered their support, citing Manhattan Beach's rising housing costs.
Have you ever said, gee, I can't afford to live here now, and what about our kids?
While developer Frank Buckley showed what he said was proof the refinery would not damage the neighborhood, the real crux of the argument is a 42-year-old California state statute called the Density Bonus Law. Basically, the law says if a developer reserves a small percentage of rental units for low-income tenants, they can build bigger and quicker, fast-tracking impact studies and cutting some regulation. And the city's planning commission says the state tied their hands. The project has to go forward. But Mayor Steve Napolitano aimed for the heart of the issue.
Trying to find out if this is the altruistic endeavor to provide affordable housing in Manhattan Beach, or if affordable housing is just the vehicle to maximize the build out of this so you can maximize your profit.
So yes, it does incentivize developers. And it didn't do...
Just because you can, does that mean you should?
Not in every location. I think in this location, it's very appropriate.
Frank, who is a local resident, says he's just trying to help his hometown.
And I think people generally recognize that we are in a housing shortage. We're not looking to solve the state's housing problems with a single project, but we're doing our part in Manhattan Beach.
You know, I don't care if they put all low-income units over there. I just want it to match the character of my town.
For now, the city council decided to delay a final vote and a possible showdown with the state until September, presumably to scrutinize the development's impact on Rick's neighborhood. But SoCal's housing crisis has already moved into one of its wealthiest beach communities.
I'm Lydia Pantases in the Antelope Valley. Coming up, I'll show you what challenges the wine industry is facing as they go into harvest.
At Spectrum News 1, we believe telling our community's stories brings us closer together, connecting neighbors with neighbors, shining your light on these pockets of positivity. Showing you how Southern California is coming together. Share your moments with us using the hashtag #OneSoCal. We are all One SoCal.
The wine harvest is underway here in Southern California, but it's proved to be a difficult time for vineyards as they deal with climate change and labor shortages. Lydia Pantases spoke with a local businessman to see how he's adjusting.
Getting up at 6 in the morning to work on a vineyard, not something Leon Callahan expected he'd be doing during his retirement.
I mean, harvesting grapes, no, that was not a thought.
That was until his friend DiMaggio Washington asked for help. DiMaggio owns Rancho Santiago Vineyards, Thief and Barrel Winery, and is also a wine professor at College of the Canyons. The first time Callahan helped was 20 years ago. The harvest was much smaller.
I mean, we were friends and we've done a lot of things together, so it wasn't really a big deal. If he asked, could you do it? Sure. So we never, it wasn't even really a second thought.
Callahan is just one of a handful of friends who volunteers their time helping harvest grapes. As the harvest grew and his winery went commercial, DiMaggio thought he'd eventually hire a crew, but that has become harder to do, especially with labor shortages and higher paying jobs available.
And people even have left the industry as a whole and sought other employment in a different field because COVID sort of wiped this out. And then when they've left to do other things, you can't bring them back. So now this is empty hole where, if you don't have friends and family, you may not get the job done.
Yeah. He says another issue he's facing is climate change. Back in 2002, he would have harvested these grapes during the third week of September. He's now harvesting in mid-August.
And so if climate continues to go the way it's going now, a lot of us will abandon the vineyards because you would not be able to get anything to properly grow here. If it's going to be consistently 95 degrees or greater and increase by 1 or 2 degrees every year, it'll be impossible to grow a vineyard here.
For now, Washington says the grapes are still growing beautifully and making tasty wine. As for Callahan, he says helping has its benefits, including getting to drink some of the wine he's harvested. He's also learned a lot.
I know more about wines than I ever thought I would.
Which makes him appreciate the harvest that much more.
Thank you, Lydia. The number of Americans filing for unemployment fell last week. 243,000 people applied for jobless benefits, which is 2,000 fewer than the week prior. In California, 37,000 people filed first-time claims. That's 3,000 fewer than last week. And 72% of economists predict the U.S. will enter a recession by the middle of next year. That's according to a new poll by the National Association of Business Economics. Most of those surveyed say they had doubts the Federal Reserve could bring down inflation without causing a recession. The Federal Reserve announced it will continue hiking interest rates to help offset inflation. Chair Jerome Powell acknowledged the hikes carry the risk of causing a recession and layoffs. Tequila drinkers, listen up. Mezcal is the fastest growing drink in the world. U.S. Food says it expects sales to increase nearly 18% by the end of the year. Natalie Basha traveled to follow the rise of mezcal and also learned about the roots in the colorful region of Oaxaca, Mexico.
He owns 3 very popular restaurants here in LA called Madre, but what really makes owner Ivan Vasquez most proud are his Oaxacan roots, and he displays that pride through his collection of mezcal, 500 bottles and counting.
So this one was 82 liters produced for Madre.
It's the largest private collection in the world, and he knew there was no other city where he wanted to build this collection than LA.
First of all, because it's the city that opened the doors for me, and we have the biggest Oaxacan community in the United States here.
Ivan handpicks these bottles from the producers in Oaxaca. And despite the incredible popularity of mezcal today, you won't find a single celebrity brand in his collection. Ivan's entire mission behind this collection is to support small traditional family farms, because losing those family farms would be akin to losing touch with Oaxaca's cultural identity.
What you're pouring in a bottle, what you're pouring in a cup, in a glass, on a copita, is history, heritage of Mexico.
Mezcal is important to the culture of Oaxaca because it's been distilled in some form for almost 3,000 years here, and it's been used for ceremonies and celebrations for just as long. One of the brands that Ivan carries is called Quiche. It's been in Felix Monterosa's family for over 100 years.
Me siento muy afortunado.
I feel very fortunate to live in this time of rebirth. In the case of my predecessors, unfortunately, they had to migrate to the United States to look for other work. Felix's uncle Felipe was one of those people, pushed to move to LA in search of work when the mezcal industry dwindled.
Porque aquí el mezcal estaba muy barato.
Because here the mezcal was very cheap and there wasn't any other way to make money. And I saw that other people were going, so I went too. But because of the success of the family business today and the support from people like Ivan, Felipe was able to return to Oaxaca 8 years ago, though he sends a short message back to LA.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Ivan's support of the Monterosa family is why, as the mezcal industry grows, he says it's important for him to remember that mezcal is so much more than just an alcohol.
So it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of commitment from the producer family.
And on this trip to Oaxaca, Ivan brought home another 22 bottles, some from Quiche, some from other farms, but each one containing that cultural identity of his beloved Oaxaca.
Los Angeles is home to the most Oaxacan immigrants in the country. That's according to Cielo.com. Roughly 180,000 in LA County alone.
The Hollywood Bowl continues with its 100th year celebrations with the 4th installment of its popular Black Movie Soundtrack concert series. I'm Christopher G., and coming up, I'll introduce you to artistic director Marcus Miller as he and the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra prepare for the upcoming concert.
How did we come to the end it's a classic song from Eddie Murphy's Boomerang soundtrack. And earlier this week, the Hollywood Bowl held its 4th installment of the Black movie soundtrack. The concert featured artists such as Warren G, Babyface, Jennifer Holliday, and more. Christopher G spoke with the musical director of the big event.
The Hollywood Bowl continues its 100th year celebration with the 4th installment of its Black movie soundtrack concert series. I'm Christopher G, and I'll introduce you to artistic director Marcus Miller as he and the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra prepare for this concert. Composer, performer, and artistic director of the Black Movie Soundtrack Concert Series, Marcus Miller is rehearsing here at the Walt Disney Concert Hall for a performance to take place at the Hollywood Bowl. Marcus says he and director Reginald Hudland originally conceived the idea as a small-scale concert for a couple hundred people.
Oh, someone at the Bowl got wind of this thing and said, yeah, you're going to do that this summer at the Bowl, you know? So, whoa.
And now this celebration of music in Black cinema is returning for its 4th year this summer, attracting some of the biggest names in music and movies.
At first it was hard because we couldn't describe what this thing was going to be. But now people are calling us and say, hey man, I'd like to be a part of it, which is fantastic.
Reginald Hudland and Marcus curated the show. Craig Robinson is the host, and conductor Thomas Wilkins will join them on stage with the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra, performing some of our favorite music and songs from the movies. Marcus's history with film music goes back to early collaborations with legends like Miles Davis, who brought Marcus into an early film project as composer and producer. Marcus recalls writing his first 2 pieces for the film Siesta.
You know, you have a piece of music that's okay, and then Miles adds his trumpet to it, and all of a sudden it becomes something incredible. And we handed it in, and I felt like it was a job well done, and they said, very good. Now for the next scene, I said, wait, am I doing this whole movie? And they said, yeah, Miles didn't tell you? I said, yeah, no, Miles didn't tell me.
Since then, Marcus has collaborated with an impressive list of artists from Luther Vandross to Aretha Franklin. But as the concert's artistic director, he sees a chance to both entertain and educate.
I want you to know this music. I want you to know who Sidney Poitier is. I want you to know who Lena Horne is, Eartha Kitt, and all these great performers before your time. And yes, hopefully some kid will hear something and just get excited. Maybe they'll pick up an instrument. Maybe they'll decide to become a movie director, you know?
Marcus says it was the bass line from the movie theme Shaft that made him pick up the bass himself. Now he's paying his love for the Black movie soundtrack forward for 18,000 people at the Hollywood Bowl.
The Film Independent Spirit Awards are moving toward gender-neutral categories for lead and supporting roles in film and TV. Organizers increased the budget cap for eligible films by $8 million. Next year's ceremony is scheduled for March 4th. And the California Film Commission is awarding nearly $100 million in tax credits to 18 projects, including the Joker sequel. It's through California's Film and TV Tax Credits program, which Governor Gavin Newsom plans to extend through 2030. Over the past couple of years, esports have garnered some of the largest followings in the world, but the lack of diversity within the industry is still a big problem. Renee Ng shows us how a new tech center plans to change that.
Playing video games and competing in esports, especially in an arena like this, can be a lot of fun, and it can also lead to a viable career path. I'm Renee Ng here at the SOLA Tech and Entrepreneurship Center, and I'll share why they are training youth here in South LA all about the industry and why they want every student to walk out of here with either a job or an internship. As 10th grader Nia Herring gears up to play a video game, sure, she's having fun, but she's also taking stock of what's on the screen.
The female character representation is really nice. They're not like over-sexualized or anything like they usually are. They're really great.
Herring and her brother Matthew, right next to her, are learning the ins and outs of the gaming industry at the new SOLA Tech and Entrepreneurship Center in South LA. That means finding out what goes into making a game. Coding, programming, cybersecurity, animation.
Designing the characters is very unique because they can look how you want them to look. They can move how you want them to look. They have certain powers.
The center's curriculum and culture manager, Ajay Mani, says he's training the next generation of Black and Latino tech leaders, esport athletes, and game developers, which are sorely lacking in the industry.
It's not that these kids have never heard of esports gamers, they never heard of graphic designers, it's that they weren't being reflected. And when you don't see yourself reflected in a field, it's really hard to grow and strive for something you don't think there's a place for you.
Monty says gaming typically requires fast internet and a high-powered computer, which may be out of reach for some youth. The center provides all of that with the help of a $2 million donation from Riot Games. The goal is every student leaves here with a job, scholarship, or certification.
Like, video games are so low on most people's priority that, oh no, I want to do this as a career. That's ridiculous. But like here, no, you get to take a class, and like, yeah, his class is like, he's teaching them Illustrator and he's teaching the basics of marketing and like event planning, but they're also learning networking.
But Herring's mother, Naima, wasn't always convinced that a job in the gaming industry was realistic.
I was thinking very short-sighted and very limited too. But once when I heard about the video game design, I started thinking about how many people actually go into the creation of a video game.
The center's classes are free and open to youth from ages 11 to 18. Herring says learning coding and design aren't the easiest.
But if you're interested, like, it's very nice to get into, just to make your own game, and you're really proud of it.
Ultimately creating something that's fun to play while building skills for her future.
Blue 32's at the hut. Up next, we're talking college football and what can we expect from the Bruins and the Trojans this year. Stay with us. Get pumped up. College football is officially back. Games starting this weekend. Some schools are playing overseas. Nebraska, Northwestern, they're in Dublin, Ireland now. Here's a quick of the AP top 25 teams. And the top 8 teams we're going to highlight here: Alabama, of course, Heisman winner, SoCal native Bryce Young. And then number 2, you got Heisman favorite C.J. Stroud, another local product. And rounding out the rest of the teams are Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Utah, and Michigan. And as for our SoCal teams, USC and UCLA are looking to get back on track. They haven't been pretty good of late. Joining me now to talk about it is my girl, Nikki K. Yeah, you know, I'm sorry about UCLA. What's up with your boys? Are they going to be good this year?
Listen, you know what, Tim? I can hear the 8 claps reverberating from the Rose Bowl already. It feels good to be back. And when I look at UCLA and think of the team this year, I think of the word experience. We're now entering year 5 of the Chip Kelly era, and he's coming into 2022 with a roster full of guys who have been with him since the beginning. When you look at redshirt seasons and the added year from COVID, nearly half of his players are entering their 4th year as Bruins. Now, I was out at practice this week, and you could feel that sense of urgency and familiarity. The type of expectations come from knowing your role and responsibility. And that experience comes at the most important position. You have quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who decided to return for his 5th year, and you've got his running mate, running back Zach Charbonnet, who finished 2nd in the conference last season with over 1,100 rushing yards. The Bruins offense led the pack last year in average points per game and were 2nd in yards. And on the other side of the ball, the Bruins have got some work to do. They've got a new defensive coordinator, Bill McGovern, and he's basically got to fix the Bruins' pass defense, which was the worst in the conference last season. So I think the secondary is more veteran. The front 7 have been reinforced by some transfers, and I got to speak with 6-year defensive back Mo Osling III, and he's saying, hey, everybody, don't you forget about us, especially all you Trojan fans.
You see what happened last year. We reloaded, so, we coming back. We back at the Rose Bowl, so, you can expect big things this year. People just forgetting about us, we still here, we still got a lot of players coming back. We still got a lot of transfers coming in.
Talk about a favorable schedule. UCLA has 8, yes, 8 home games for the first time since 1939, including 3 non-conference opponents that will be a good opportunity, let's just say, for the Bruins to get some rhythm. But things are going to get really interesting in October. That's where I'm checking out the schedule. On the 7th, UCLA welcomes in number 7 Utah. 2 weeks later, they travel to take on number 11 Oregon. And of course, we all have that crosstown showdown circled on the calendar. November 19th, I'm picking UCLA to ultimately finish 2nd in the Pac-12 conference this season.
And Nikki, they better finish 2nd in the conference, considering they have 8 home games in a college football schedule. That's crazy. As for USC, they're ranked 15th in the AP Pro poll. Kristen Lago gives us a look ahead at the Trojan season as they prepare to start their year against Rice.
What's up, everyone? I'm Kristen Lago reporting from Dallas, Texas, but of course here to bring you a little USC football preview. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Kristen, you're biased, you went to USC, and you're right, I am biased, but I'm about to put that bias aside to bring you the facts, and that's that this USC team is going to be the real deal. First-year head coach Lincoln Riley came in and completely flipped the script on campus, instilling a new sense of accountability that the 4-8 Trojans desperately lacked last year. Not to mention, he's loaded with talent. It starts with the stud transfer from Oklahoma and quarterback Caleb Williams. It moves into a stacked receiving room headlined by the Blitnikoff Award winner Jordan Addison, and then it trickles down to defense with several high-impact returners, including defensive lineman Tuli Tuipulotu. However, that's my big question for the Trojans this year, their defense. Can defensive coordinator Alex Grinch breathe new life into this unit? Overall, though, I'm thinking the 4-8 Trojans of last year are going to flip that script, at least an 8-4 season under Lincoln Riley, and that's good news for the Trojans and good news for me. Bye, Don.
Now to the NFL. Who thought it was a good idea to have the Rams and Bengals have joint practices after LA beat them down in Super Bowl 56? So, of course, a brawl erupted between the two, a big old melee on Thursday. They end the preseason against each other this weekend. The NFL doesn't impose any disciplinary actions for what happens at teams' practices. As the Super Bowl champions begin defending their title in less than 2 weeks, their opening night against the Bills, they're also focusing on raising money for the next generation of Angelinos, including the little, cute Watch Rams. With a quick glance, you might think you're looking at Rams superstar tackle Aaron Donald. But this little big guy is 12-year-old Samuel Richard.
That's better, Newsy.
He hits hard as a linebacker and puts fear into defenders as a running back of the Watch Rams youth football team. For him, the game is his escape.
It's basically my therapy, something that helps me just focus about one thing and make sure that I'm doing things that I need to do.
The team was created 9 years ago by LAPD officers, many of which are coaches, like Lester Bodyford with the 77th Division.
Everybody listen, we have a game Saturday.
He says it's important these young players know there are officers who are there to support them in the trenches.
They get an opportunity to see that we are human, that we have kids, that we were once kids just like them, growing up in areas just like this. It's a football program, but none of this is about football.
The Los Angeles Rams began a partnership with the youth team in 2019, providing funding and more. Every single player on the Rams roster was on hand as the team held its annual charity brunch this week, where fans got to sit with players as the event featured a big-time auction.
$30,000 now $31,000.
The money going to its foundation, which supports groups like the Watch Rams. Guys like safety Nick Scott understand how important it is to bring up the next generation.
Just because we were in those kids' positions when we were their age, and we needed a little push ourselves. Nobody here has gotten here by themselves.
Samuel appreciates the love from both the big Rams and the officers who've become like big brothers.
It's good that somebody's giving back to me because like some people on Watch really don't have a lot, so it's nice for them to give back to us.
Which means he gets to focus on his goal of making it to the NFL, maybe one day being an LA Ram. But first it starts here in his Watch community. On this week's In Focus SoCal, Tanya McCray sits down with Assembly member Sharon Quirk-Silva to take a closer look at issues affecting her district. Quirk-Silva represents portions of northern Orange County. She said one issue is that not getting enough attention can be addressed by her Right to Restrooms Act. Take a listen.
We know that during the pandemic, our fast food restaurants closed, retail closed, and we think about over 6,000 people facing homelessness in Orange County. The question is, where do they use the restroom? If our public spaces like park bathrooms are closed, community centers are closed. So I think it's a critical need thinking about sanitation, but it isn't just for those experiencing homelessness. It's also for parents taking their children to a public park, for seniors, women who are pregnant, And when there is a lack of public restrooms, it really begs the question, what is our goal for government and what should we be responsible for?
You can catch the rest of Tanya's conversation on this week's In Focus SoCal on Sunday at 9 a.m. and at noon. The high school football season is underway, and as we enter week 1 of games, last season, Venice High School ended the year as Division I city section champs. Nikki Kay shows us the vision behind head coach Angelo Gasca.
Football at Venice High School is a family affair. And for head coach Angelo Gasca, there's no place he'd rather be.
Well, it's home. That's the most special thing. I grew up in the community. I kind of looked at the guys playing high school and dreamed of the day I would be one of them. I could have never dreamed that I would end up as the coach.
After playing quarterback for the Gondoliers in the 70s, Angelo would return to coach, and he would never leave. It's been 32 years of coaching at Venice High School.
Everybody right here, bring it up.
And of everything he's seen in that time, last year was unprecedented, when the Gondoliers won the program's first ever city championship. For Coach, that was so much more than just a moment.
I thought of all the guys who I've played with, who I coached with, who maybe didn't get that far, and I wanted to bring them along.
Ignatius Porsche Jr. once played for Coach Gasca.
5 yards, Nico.
Now he goes by Coach Iggy, and he's been on Coach Gasca's staff for 6 years.
While I was trying to figure my life out after college, he's like, you might as well just start coaching if you're not going to do anything. I said, okay, I'll give it a try, and I ended up just falling in love with it. So I started coaching, and then he even convinced me to start teaching.
Coach Iggy's story is one of many. Throughout his 3 decades with the program, Gasca has prioritized the development of his players as men before athletes. His staff has a rotating door of coaching assistants that used to play for him.
He was a major contributor to how the man I am today.
Angelo has built the type of program that Venice-grown kids choose to stay and play for. Robert Lamar knows his coach is practically a living legend.
So Coach Gasca has always been there for me, been my rock. Just pretty much provide something I don't think I'll get anywhere else.
It's the community, the camaraderie, and the continuity built by this man.
Now. We're not done by any means, but we're getting better.
Which make Venice football feel like one big family.
Venice on me, Venice on 3. 1, 2, 3, Venice!
Friday Night Lights are back, and Narbonne High School is looking to return to the glory it once knew. The Gauchos went from a powerhouse known across the nation to ruins after violations, but their second-year head coach is looking to restore order.
H, we're running Y.
Class is in session inside the Narbonne football weight room, and this is the main teacher, Malcolm Manuel, head coach, leading his team through a film session, getting ready for a new season.
We have 3 linebackers that are too tall.
He got the job in 2020, inheriting a mess. The program was banned from the postseason for 2 seasons because of rules violations, resulting in back-to-back losing seasons and a student exodus, leaving Coach Manuel with only 23 players in 2021.
The hardest thing was just looking at the roster and seeing how deflated it was, and just seeing that, we don't have enough kids to go JV varsity, and sometimes we didn't even have enough coaches at the time because it took time to get them cleared.
But after a tough 2-9 regular season, Manuel led his team to an unexpected playoff run last year, even reaching the Division III finals.
It meant a lot to me personally for my first full year here, and it meant a lot to our program. And plus, the struggles that we had in the regular season kind of erased themselves when we got to the playoffs.
And players like Carvel Rice have been rewarded. He could have left like many others and gone to a different high school to play, but he decided to stay home in his community at Narbonne.
Just because it's where I started, so I would like to finish here. I got good faith in the coaches here. I know that they got their best effort in the team and the players first.
Now Coach Manuel wants to rebuild a once proud program, one with championship pedigree and history.
It's something that we got to do one day at a time. I think every coach, every player here eventually wants to get back to that powerhouse level.
And this is where it starts.
Alignment, assignment, technique.
The film room, where the journey of the return to greatness begins. Here's a few sports headlines you might have missed this week. Angels owner Arte Moreno may sell the team he's owned for nearly 2 decades. Moreno hired a financial advising firm to evaluate his options. He bought the Angels in 2003 for about $180 million, but now the team is evaluated at $2 billion with B in a recent Forbes magazine report. Crypto.com Arena announced it's making some major upgrades over the next few years. The arena launched a multi-million-dollar renovation project that includes making everything bigger, sound systems, bigger TV screens, and better food options, concession stands. The project will also replace the street between the arena and LA Live with a new public plaza. Californians continue to deal with drought conditions and has made them now rethink how they plan to showcase their gardens. Coming up, a new trend that's getting a lot of attention. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. And now part 2 of our continuing series from Oaxaca, Mexico. While we are experiencing our own severe drought, most of Mexico is too, and it's putting strain on the mezcal industry. Nali Basha comes back to us to tell us how neighbors are dealing with the impacts.
He is a father, brother, a son, and a friend. But Gonzalo Martinez Cernas is above all a mezcalero, a mezcal maker. Mezcal is part of my life. I grew up watching my parents, my grandparents sowing agave, and because of this, I have a great affection and respect for it. Gonzalo runs Mezcal Macorichos with all his siblings, as their family has done for many generations. But what worries him most these days is the water shortage that has hit Oaxaca and most of Mexico. The North American Drought Monitor has said it's due to climate change and badly mismanaged water rights. And that's a problem for the production of mezcal, which requires a lot of water. This water's from a well. In the case of these copper distillers, they're 1,000-liter tanks. So in order not to waste too much water, we only distill once a day. Besides the drought, Gonzalo says one of his biggest threats are mass mezcal and celebrity producers taking more than their fair share of water. But there are some, like these huge businesses, whose only goal is volume. And that means every day they're using more water, drilling deeper wells, and putting our work at risk. Losing mezcal production would be an economic disaster for Oaxaca. According to AFAR, approximately $413 million were made in the mezcal industry in 2020 alone. Just a few minutes away, mezcalero Valentin stares climate change in the face. Before, I remember in the season when I was a kid, it rained a lot. His agave fields, interplanted with crucial milpa, corn, beans, and squash, are struggling to survive with the lack of rain. We were really pleased because we could see that, for example, my parents and my grandparents, they could watch their milpa growing with a lot of water. But right now, the field looks very sad. So, what's the solution? Gonzalo says their best and only weapon is education. It's really worrying. I think that this is on a global level, and we can do something. At the very least, we can educate the consumers about what's behind this drink. But in the meantime, he spends every waking moment dedicated to the production of the spirit that keeps his family history alive.
For many of us, conserving water means a transformation for our lawns. Rachel Minitoff introduces us to the Hugel culture.
Caring for her garden is a labor of love. For Elena O'Brien, she's created a drought-resistant sanctuary in her front yard.
As I mentioned recently to someone walking by, it's been my great art project.
This work of art provides shade and privacy, and it's water efficient. Its design is based on a centuries-old practice called Hugel culture, which in German means small hill.
I love seeing nature. I love going to the mountains. I love going to the beach, too, and finding sticks and things that are just beautiful. So the fact that I could actually use them to build this construct was what appealed to me.
Over a 2-year period, O'Brien transformed her lawn into this, blooming hugels and all. Cardboard is her foundation, topped with recycled wood, branches, and tree trunks to create a mound of soil where she plants California native grapes, shrubs, and trees. She learned this technique in a class through Pasadena Water and Power. Ursula Schmidt helps manage the city's conservation efforts.
And hugels are an amazing feature because not only do they capture water and hold it and provide important nutrients for the soil, they also sequester carbon.
PWP says hugels are a great way to retain moisture, but they are labor intensive to build. So if you're looking to revamp your garden and want to start small, Schmidt suggests heading over to their website where you can actually search for drought-tolerant plants and make a list of the ones you want to bring to your local nursery.
Our landscapes are an incredible ecosystem, and there's so much habitat that is in those landscapes, and there's a lot of biodiversity in those landscapes, and we don't want to lose that, right?
O'Brien says she's been able to build a new garden along with a newfound connection to the land.
To know, even in my small dwelling here, I can do my part to cool the earth and not waste it. It's, once again, just a really good feeling for me.
She waters everything by hand and redirects rainwater into the swales that run next to her hugels. She's repurposing the resources she already has, using an old technique to create something new.
And before we go, we got to give you a look at what we think will happen this college football season. Who's going to make it to the college football playoff? Here's my 4 in no order at all. Alabama, of course. Georgia, of course. Utah. And I also have Houston. Now, why Houston? Because they're probably going to go undefeated in a nobody conference. And why not get an undefeated team in the playoff? Nikki.
Tim, I'll take it. You know what? I'm right there with you. Alabama and Georgia opening as co-favorites to win it all this season with odds of plus 200. But you know what? I'm going with Clemson. They were absent from the college football playoffs last year. We know Dabo's got what it takes. And then how about Notre Dame? They finished top 5 last year. They've got a quarterback, Tyler Buchner, a SoCal product. But I think the Fighting Irish are going to upset Ohio State first game of the season.
You win very traditional, very safe.
Okay, Tim, call me out.
UCLA, where's your boy? Where they going to finish?
They're going to finish top 10. Let's go, Bruins.
That's it for the show. Let's get it on!